What up, y'all? It's Dev from Mtg, and Ziggy's on the table in front of me. He's being a good guy. We got a bunch of Bloomburrow spoilers to look at. And I mean a bunch, just when you thought that this set was just about over. We got to be wrapping this thing up, right? No, we got like 40 cards to look at today. It's a whole bunch, not to mention tomorrow. According to Mythic Spoilers front page, there's still like 50 cards in this set to spoil, so we'll have a big one then too. But like Mama used to say, we can't worry about tomorrow. We got to worry about today. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and start looking at this mountain of cards. You know, sometimes the cool thing about Magic cards, the beautiful thing really, is that there are good ones and there are bad ones. It's just like life, right? You have to take the good with the bad. So we're going to look at stuff like Starforged Sword and Nightwhirl Hermit first, and then when we get to the rares and mythics, we'll be very appreciative of their quality. So with that in mind, Starforged Sword is 4 mana for an artifact. It's an equipment that you equip for 3 mana, and you can gift a tapped fish. When it enters, if the gift was promised, attach Starforged Swords to target creature you control. Equipped creature gets +3/+3 and loses flying. Heck of a Snarfblat he's got there, but honestly, I think this card is notably bad. In fact, it might be potentially the worst card in the set. I might be off base and just missing something hardcore here, but like, this is not very good at all. So I'll just move on to Nightwhirl Hermit. This is 3 mana, 2 and a blue for a 1/4 rat rogue with vigilance. It also has Threshold. As long as 7 or more cards are in your yard, Nightwhirl Hermit gets +1/+0 and cannot be blocked. So 3 mana for kind of a 2/4 that can't be blocked, also has vigilance. This might actually be decent. The vigilance could be key to this being like okay in limited. You know, there's plenty of ways to get threshold in limited, but I still say you might have to wait a turn or two on it. And even if you can get the threshold, it's not like that impressive. So there's better cards to look at today, I promise. Let's keep going and look at Rabbit Response and Hoarder's Overflow. Now, Rabbit Response is 4 mana, 2 and 2 white for an instant. Creatures you control get +2/+1 until end of turn. If you control a rabbit, you get to scry 2. So it's this card in this set. I feel like at least like 50 different slots in every set are taken up by cards that have already existed and been printed dozens of times at this point, if not more than dozens somehow. And they just have like tiny tweaks to them every time. And this is one of those. It's one of those overrun anthemy instant speed things you can do in draft for your aggro deck, and you play it sometimes. Now, Hoarder's Overflow is trying to trick us into believing it's a decent Magic card, but I'm not sure I'm buying it. This is 2 mana, 1 and a red for an enchantment. When it enters and whenever you expend 4, put a stash counter on this enchantment. You can also pay 1 and a red and sacrifice Overflow to discard your hand and then draw cards equal to the number of stash counters on Hoarder's Overflow. I've already seen multiple people on the internet make the mistake of thinking that this is 4 mana, draw 2 cards, but it's not. If you spend the mana on its ability, that's not casting spells. That isn't spending mana on casting spells. It specifically doesn't work with itself, which makes me not like it even more. I just think you're not drawing that many cards off of this, and I think there are cards in Standard presently that are better versions of this and like already don't really see that much play. So I don't have a whole lot of faith in the Overflow, but I can see where some people might like be interested in this card for a deck or two. But you know, if you're aggro, how many times are you spending 4 mana in a turn, especially after like turn 4? You just don't have any cards in your hand, which I guess is when you pop this to draw 2 cards. So again, I just feel like you could do better than this, but I'm sure it's got its use cases. Anyway, let's keep going and look at Playful Shove and Blooming Blast up next. Playful Shove it's actually more interesting than it has any right to be. This is 2 mana, 1 and a red for a sorcery that deals a damage to a target, and you draw a card. So I really kind of think this is okay, you know? You get like a Bowmaster's trigger. If I put it in that kind of context, does it sound a little bit better? You get an Orcish Bowmaster trigger, and you get to draw a card. It is 2 mana, and it is a sorcery, which is poop and dupe, but like, it's all overall, like, I don't think this sees Standard play. I just think you have like way better options in most decks than this, but like, this is startlingly close for how bad I imagine it could look to some people. Then again, maybe I'm still being fooled. There was a card way back in Ice Age, like around the time I first started playing, called Touch of Death. That's like 3 mana for 1 damage to a thing, and you get to draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep, which was, we called it cantripping. Old people call it cantripping when you do that. This was a terrible Magic card. It was so bad. It was really bad. But I wanted it to be good so much because I thought the art was incredible. I thought this art was sick when I was like 11 years old, dude. You see that skeleton guy with all them swords? How much cooler could a piece of media be? So, You know, maybe 30 years later, I haven't learned my lesson and I still want this effect to be cool. But hey, they took a mana off. You get to draw the card right away. So Touch of Death is at least better 30 years later, but again, maybe I'm still falling for it. But Blooming Blast is probably the better card, I think. This is 2 mana, 1 and a red for an instant, in which you gift a treasure if you'd like to. It does 2 damage to target creature, and if you promise the gift, Blast also deals 3 damage to that creature's controller. I want this card to be more interesting than it is. I want to be able to somehow gift yourself the treasure and target your own stuff. You can't do that. This is strictly like a Kami's Flare or something is what it reminds me of, but you're not restricted specifically to like modified dudes in your deck or anything. The problem is gifting your opponent a treasure is a pretty big deal, so I'm not sure how much play the card actually sees, but in a kind of dedicated burn deck, you always want this form of effect, and a lot of the time you don't care that you're ramping your opponent, you're just trying to count to 20 as quickly as possible, so I don't know, there might be a life ahead of this card. But hey, while we're in a sort of okay removal mode, let's look at Nocturnal Hunger. And I guess we should look at Calamitous Tide, even though it's not great. But Nocturnal Hunger, on the other hand, might be okay. This is 3 mana, 2 and a black for an instant, in which you gift a food if you'd like to. Destroy target creature. If the gift was not promised, you lose 2 life. So, okay, if you gift them the food, you don't lose 2 life, but I guess that they gain 3, and you give them a token, which is actually like a real thing. It's actually better than them gaining 3 life. Having a token is great in the new standard. So I don't know, man. 3 mana for destroy target creature at instant speed is actually not super playable, but I think you play every copy of this that you can get your hands on in limited, so it's definitely worth noting. But as far as Calamity Tide, this is not, I worry about it. Calamitous Tide is 6 mana, 4 and 2 blue for a sorcery. Return up to 2 target creatures to their owner's hands. Draw 2, and then discard a card. So if this were instant speed, we still would not be talking, but at least we'd be like, you can do this and this. With this being sorcery speed, I don't love it, but you do get to take 2 things off the table, and draw 2 discard is also like obviously fantastic. It's like one of the best parts of the card. Affecting the board state and drawing extra cards is a way to put an opponent way behind, but 6 mana is just way too much for this effect. Let's look at the actual decent removal from today. I think there were some really, really good ones. Let's take a look at Banishing Light, a reprint. You probably know what it does, but Feed the Cycle. That's brand new, and it could be very, very good. So let's take a look at Banishing Light. In case you've never seen it, it's 3 mana, 2 and a white for an Oblivion Ring. It's just actually Oblivion Ring. When it comes into play, you're going to exile a non-land permanent until it leaves the battlefield. It's the whole card. This is actually decent. Doesn't always see play in Standard, and increasingly less does it see play when it does get printed into Standard, but it doesn't mean it's a terrible Magic card, and there are definitely spots for it. But Feed the Cycle, this is 2 mana, 1 and a black for an instant. As an additional cost to cast this spell, you can either forage or you can pay a black mana. Destroy target creature or planeswalker. Being able to forage rather than pay any extra mana for this is probably incredible, like starting on turn 5 or 6, like in the mid-game for a control deck or a mid-range deck. This looks like a pretty easy instant speed answer to almost any threat that could be coming your way. And even if you have to pay the extra mana for it, like, okay, whatever. So like for 3 mana, this is like a hero's downfall. Effectively, literally exactly a hero's downfall, actually. And what I think we have here technically is just a strictly better hero's downfall. So it's definitely worthy of note. One of the better cards of the day, like pretty easily. How much play does it ultimately end up seeing? I'm not sure, but like Go for the Throat and Cut Down and a bunch of other incredible removal spells already in Standard. This thing definitely has to like make tryouts. It's got to earn its jersey, but it very well may. Now next, let's look at Sticky Tongue Sentinel, which is a great name, and 3 Tree Mascot. Now, Sticky Tongue Sentinel over here is 3 mana, 2 and a green for a 3/3 Frog Warrior with reach, and when it enters, return up to 1 other target permanent you control to its owner's hand. So kind of a nurturing pixie style effect that's going to be good specifically in like limited frog decks because they want to be bouncing each other over and over, and we'll actually see a rare later that like really helps pay off these frog strategies of like bouncing your own guys. So I do kind of like this a good bit, and there's obviously tricks you can do with it, very similar tricks to Nurturing Pixie. Will we see this card in Standard the same way we see Nurturing Pixie attempting to establish a foothold? I really don't think so, but I do like this effect when I see it. You can get up to some shenanigans. Some shenanigans, he says. We'll move on. Do 3-tree mascot, 2 mana for a 2/1 artifact creature, which is also a shapeshifter. And that means it's got the changeling, but you can also pay 1 mana to add a mana of any color, but you can only activate this ability once each turn. Don't get any ideas. It's not like there aren't already a million cards like this in Magic that let you funnel mana for as many times as you want. No, it'd be way too dangerous if you could funnel as much mana as you want. We just can't let you do that. We're just going to be as slap happy with this extra line of text as we possibly can nowadays. Just throw it on everything. The funneling mana? That's way too strong. Sorry, I'm not putting on a show, but I actually kind of like this, you know. This is yet another, like, changeling card in the set that is an artifact creature that any deck can play, and I actually really like the idea of, like, changeling artifact creatures. It's not like it's a brand new concept or anything, but it is cool that not only is it every creature type, it's also the artifact creature type. So it literally every creature type, which I kind of think is cool, but altogether, this is actually, like, very much worth playing, I think, in a ton of limited decks, and I'm not sure it's going to ever be there in Standard. We need to see, like, actually strong changelings, and I think we have to wait till Lorwyn to actually see those, but it's good that they're giving us a couple of them for the limited environment, because it'll really help tie the room together, Lebowski. But next, let's take a look at Heirloom Epic and Mind Whisker. Now, Heirloom Epic, I want this card to be good so much, but, like, when you face the reality, it's probably not that great, but it's interesting. Just a single mana for an artifact. You can pay 4, tap it, and draw a card. For each mana, that is already way better. It's strictly better than JM Tome, so I think we got a winner. But yeah, for 4 mana, you tap it and draw a card. And for each mana in this ability's activation cost, you can convoke it. You may tap an untapped creature you control rather than pay that mana. Activate only as a sorcery. All right, it's worse than JM Tome now. It's like the activate only as a sorcery really, really, really kills this. Because now, if you actually want to activate this for less mana, you have to tap down your guys on your turns. They can't attack, they can't block. You know what? You know how to play Magic. So, like, that's a definite, like, issue, I think. Again, I want this card to be so good, but the fact that its sorcery speed is just a knife in the heart, 0 out of 10, would not recommend. It's a bad book. But let's move on to Mind Whisker. This is 3 mana. Again, it's a 1 mana artifact. That can't be that bad, right? It could be. It could actually be a giant stinker. But anyway, Mind Whisker over here is 3 mana, 2 and a blue for a 3/2 rat wizard. At the beginning of your upkeep, surveil 1. Threshold, as long as 7 or more cards are in your yard, creatures your opponents control get -1/-0. All right. Cool. I actually think this is really, really neat. This just turns off all their offspring tokens, I guess. Like, it doesn't turn them off completely, but it just, like, shuts them down from attacking. And honestly, I think that once you have Threshold, this ability is a just board buster in limited, dude. Like, it just messes up combat for everything, throws the math all off, you know? So I think this is actually one of the cooler Threshold cards we've seen for limited so far. It doesn't do anything in Standard. I really don't think so. You know, surveilling 1 every upkeep is actually pretty slick, you know, I'm not gonna lie, but still, I think that we're just at a much higher, you know, card quality than this overall in Standard, especially for our 3-drops. But I don't know, man. It can die to cut down too, just boo. But still, in limited, again, like, if your opponent doesn't have suitable removal for this, I do think it's gonna kind of do a number on their board state. Like, it doesn't kill anything, but again, attacking and blocking is so much harder in this under these conditions. So yeah, man, I'm getting there. I kind of like it. But can we please move up a step? You know, I guess some of that removal was, like, okay that we looked at a minute ago, but removal's boring, and most of the cards we've looked at so far have been draft specials. So can we see some decent commons and uncommons? I got a couple for you. Here's Blacksmith Talent, an honored prey leader. Now, Blacksmith Talent I actually have more to say about the more I look at it, because I really wanted to hate this card. I really did. I mostly want to like cards. When I read this, I was like, "Boo, you're terrible." But, like, the more I look at it, the more I kind of think. Blacksmith Talent is a single red mana for a class. It's an enchantment. When it enters, create a colorless equipment artifact token named Sword. With equipped creature gets +1/+1, and you can equip the sword for 2. For 3 mana at sorcery speed, you can level up. At the beginning of combat on your turn, attach target equipment you control to up to 1 target creature you control. For level 3, you pay 4 mana at instant speed. During your turn, equipped creatures you control have double strike and haste. Okay. It's kind of a lot of mana for that last mode, but there are situations where that will help you break through the game, and it's probably worth playing in like red-white, equipment commander decks. I think this probably earns somewhat of a slot. Mostly because of level 2 and 3, but it does facilitate itself. It gives you a sword, and like the sword is useful on all 3 modes of this. I actually kind of like that you can make a choice between paying 2 mana to equip the sword, or you just pay 3 mana, and now the sword or any other equipment will just like equip for free at your combat step. So it's really only like 1 more mana than it would be to equip the sword, to just equip the sword in a different way. And I think that's kind of neat. But the thing I like about this most is just this first ability. A 1 mana enchantment that puts an artifact into play. Like Case of the Filched Falcon or something like that. Or the multitude of other cards that are like 1 mana and put a token into play of some kind. Like, those are actually relevant for lots and lots and lots of different reasons, Like, this is 2 cards to sacrifice to like Rotten Mouth or whatever it's called. I think that's what it's called because it's easy to remember. It's not Cottonmouth, it's Rotten Mouth. It was the last card we looked at yesterday. And you got to look at stuff like this a little closer, right? Like 1 mana things that put 2 permanents into play to sacrifice to that guy. And there's more than that, obviously. There's a ton of reasons why you might want to put extra permanents on the table. This is actually kind of neat for, the Boros Convoke deck, considering it's yet another thing that puts 2 things on the table, one of which can be like tapped down for Warden of the Inner Sky to get larger. So there are definitely reasons why you might play this card in several different builds or emergent builds in Standard. I think this is much, much better than it might first appear. I have this knee-jerk reaction of being like, Boros Equipment, yawn, bad card, and like usually that is true, but like in this case, I think we might have something that, if it's not special, it's at least better than the standard fare. Now, Honored Dre Leader, not Prey Leader. I thought it was Prey Leader. It's actually Dr. Dre. Honored Dre Leader is 3 mana, 2 and a green for a 1/1 Squirrel Warrior with Trample. When it enters, put a +1/+1 counter on it for each other squirrel and or food you control. Whenever another squirrel or food you control enters, put a +1/+1 counter on Honored Dre Leader. So this is like a Hamlet Vanguard. You remember that card? Probably don't. It cared about humans and stuff. That card was actually kind of interesting. I think it got twice. Like counters equal to twice the number of the humans you control or something like that. But the card didn't see a lot of play, but humans decks in Standard tried it out and it was okay in those. So I actually think this is not necessarily a better version or anything. I think that card may have had Ward and this doesn't have Ward. But this is downshifted to uncommon and given Trample, which might be a huge deal. It counts not only like the other creatures, like the squirrel creature type you control, but foods too, which is actually like massive because there's so many cards that create foods, and there's a few squirrels that create foods. We just saw that 2 mana 3/2 squirrel that makes a food when it ETBs and as a death trigger. So that seems pretty good on curve with this. A lot of reasons to play this card in your squirrel deck is kind of your 3-drop if you're playing 3-drops in your squirrel deck. I'm still not like sold on like the squirrel deck in Standard, but this is starting to make it look a lot better. And if nothing else, there's probably a reason to play this in all kinds of like food commander decks, and I know they exist. Trample is key here, though. I really like that about it. But either way, we'll move on to Starscape Cleric and Baker's Bane duo here. Now, Starscape Cleric is... it's one of those cards that's like all the way up here in the best uncommons or commons of the day category. But like, I actually don't think this card is very good. I'm just a sucker for it. I feel like I have to acknowledge when that happens. I love stuff like this. This is 2 mana, 1 and a black for a 2/1 Bat Cleric with Offspring for 2 and a black. It also has flying, and it cannot block, which is booties. Whenever you gain life, each opponent loses 1 life. Every single time I gain life? Do you understand how many ways there are of gaining like 1 life at a time in Standard right now? Much less Commander. I actually think that this is like a little busted in Commander, which is the real reason it's all the way up here, because that is a format in which you certainly have like 6 ways on the table of like gaining a life every single turn. So each opponent loses a life whenever I gain a life. Like, yeah, that's pretty good, man. And I'm fully aware that if I gain 5 life, each opponent loses 1 life. I 100% get that. But this is sort of it's like a sanguine bond or something that only costs 2 mana on a body. And I know it's not exactly that card. Come on, comment section. Calm down, I know, but like still, this is a pretty decent little ability to have on just a 2-drop flyer. Also love that it has flying. You know, if you don't get your Deep Cavern Bat, you get to play this, and then on your next turn, any of these like pretty amazing cards, and there are a couple of them that care about whether or not your opponent has lost life that turn, right, that are in this set. You can trigger those with this very easily, just fly over. So there's all kinds of reasons to want to play this aside from this last line of text, but obviously this last line of text is why I want to do it. We've already just seen some bats for the limited environment in this set that like either you gain a life every time you attack with a bat, or like you tap it to gain a life, or whenever a thing happens you gain a life. So there's a lot of incremental ways in Bloomburrow Limited to make this card pop off. But once you get into Standard, Pioneer, and like larger formats like that, then things actually get pretty serious, because you're just gaining 1 life at a time over and over and over, and you're doing way more damage than you think you could do with this card. Thank God it doesn't say it only triggers once per turn, because that would just kill the whole thing, and they want us to be able to have fun from time to time. So thanks for that, Wizards. But yeah, man, overall, I am really, really excited about this card. If you can't tell, I am biased towards it, and I will fully recognize it, while also saying that despite the, subjective bias I am aware of, I still think this card might have things to do, especially again in Commander. Baker's Bane Duo is another card I just really like. It's 2 mana, 1 and a green for a 2/2 squirrel raccoon, and when it enters, you create a food token. Whenever you expend 4, Baker's Bane Duo gets +1/+1 until end of turn. I really wish that was a +1/+1 counter, and I don't see anything stopping it from being a +1/+1 counter. If you're hearing like a weird popping noise every now and again, it's because Ziggy is freaking out over here on the arm of the couch. He's going absolutely nuts. Cats do that sometimes, I guess. But yeah, this is basically just a tough cookie that is kind of like Yogi Bear, his little buddy that he hangs out with. Hey, boo-boo. But yeah, honestly, a 2 mana 2/2 that makes a food token, we do already have that in Standard. It's Tough Cookie, but the good news is Tough Cookie sees play in like Simic artifacts. The bad news is this isn't an artifact, and if Tough Cookie wasn't also an artifact itself, it probably wouldn't see a whole lot of play in Simic artifacts. So, as much as I like a 2 mana guy that just throws a token into play when it ETBs, like that also is not as good as it used to be, but it might be just good enough to see some amount of play, especially considering it grows sometimes. Buddy, are you okay over there? I have to check on my cat. I think he's fine, but he's just like hanging on to the side of the couch like it's Mission Impossible. You know what I mean? So. Oh my goodness. Can I show this to you? Actually, hold on. Let me tilt the camera. And for the next couple of cards, we will just look at Ziggy and what he's doing. So let me read what's next anyway. Can you see me over here like looking at my phone? I guess it doesn't matter. You're not looking at me anyway. The next couple of cards, and actually the last couple of uncommons of the day, are Builder's Talent and Tangle Ball. But I kind of want to talk about Tangle Ball first. And I think that with the size of Ziggy's butt, I only have room for 1 card on the screen at any given time. So I think we talk about Tangle Ball first, or Link Roll, as Mythic Spoiler is calling it. This is 3 mana for a 6/6 vehicle with Vigilance. You can pay 3 and tap it to put a +1/+1 counter on a creature. Or you can tap up to 2, well, I say or, you can also tap 2 untapped tokens you control to have this become a creature till end of turn. There's no way of crewing it apart from that. Hi, I'm going to look up now. There's no way of crewing it apart from that. Now he's suddenly calm. So it looks kind of not great, but there's so many ways. How many ways? We just saw a guy, 2 mana 2/2, puts token into play. I had to compare him to Tough Cookie, which is 2 mana 2/2, puts token into play. We saw an enchantment earlier that is 1 mana to put a token into play. Novice Inspector is 1 mana, put a token into play. How many tokens? Right? Like this works with Gleeful Demolition, which gives you 3 tokens. So tapping down 2 tokens, which don't have to be creatures, just any old tokens, food, whatever you got over there. To make this 3 mana 6/6 roll in with vigilance actually seems like a halfway decent Magic card to me, and I just don't want to miss a sleeper here because this card might look unassuming and people might just be like, ho-hum vehicle, who gives a crap, you know, but still, I think a 3 mana 6/6 is absolutely nothing to sneeze at, especially if you can get it rolling quick, and I think you actually can get this attacking like very, very early. You good? Looking at me crazy. Thumping that tail. You'll be all right. You good? Oh, baby. I love you too. If you want to come over here, you can. You want to come over here? Yeah? Come on. Yeah, are you stuck in the side of the couch? Come here. Good job. Good job, buddy. I'm here for you. I love you very much. I have to find Builder's Talent on here and then make it large enough to read. Okay, there we are. You ready, bud? Yeah, you are. Good. All right, so... All right. Builder's Talent is 2 mana, 1 and a white for an enchantment. It's a class. And when it enters, you create a 0/4 white wall creature token with Defender. Whenever... You can also level this up for a single white mana. Whenever one or more non-creature, non-land permanents you control enter, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. You can also pay 5 whopping mana, 4 and a white for level 3. When this class becomes level 3, return target non-creature, non-land permanent card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So this is actually also a reanimator spell for like Omniscience, which is going to be in standard. Before too long, it's going to be in standard for Foundations, which comes out in November. But there's already like one with the multiverse and a couple of enchantments that you might want to pull out of your yard with the 5 mana class 3 or level up here. And honestly, usually I don't love level 3 on like the classes we've been seeing in the set so far because they're typically not worth the mana that you're spending on them. But like this could typically generate mana value if you're doing it right. So that actually seems good. And the first 2 modes are relatively cheap, right? You get a 0/4 Defender for 2 mana, which is kind of the going rate, but not amazing. Right? But, you know, for just a single mana, leveling this up. And then suddenly, whenever you do get an enchantment, whenever you do get an artifact, whenever you get a food token, whenever you get a treasure token, right, then suddenly, you know, buffing stuff up is actually a pretty good little consequence of that. For just a single mana, you get to level that up. So I think this is one of the better looking classes that we've seen so far. Yet another thing that is an enchantment that puts a token into play. So I don't know. All I'm saying is there's a lot of reasons to want tokens. Not just in this limited environment, just like period in general. Is the camera like tilted? I think it probably is. We'll fix it in a second. Ziggy, you okay? You see something up there? You're the star of this video today, man. Are you going a little crazy? Maybe. Ziggy. Meow. You good? You seeing stuff? Cats see things every now and again. Anyway, Builder's Talent is good. Am I crazy? Is Builder's Talent actually kind of good? Or am I a dummy? You guys love to tell me when I'm a dummy. Is it possible, or is Builder's Talent actually a Magic card? I went ahead and let him out. Maybe that'll help him. We'll see, but maybe he'll be back. Either way, we got to look at some rares now, everybody. We made it to the rares and mythics. I think there might be a mythic or two today, but this is Eluge, the Shoreless Sea. This is 4 mana, 1 and 3 blue for a star legendary elemental fish at mythic. Eluge's power and toughness are each equal to the number of islands you control. When Eluge enters or attacks, put a flood counter on target land. That land's an island in addition to its other types for as long as it has a flood counter on it. The first instant or sorcery spell you cast each turn costs blue or 1 less to cast for each land you control with a flood counter on it. Are there not other ways to put flood counters on stuff besides just this? Are there not at least a couple of cards that deal in flood counters? Am I going nuts? Am I remembering that correctly? It's like maybe this in Commander works with those like as your commander, right? But altogether, I think it's just a really, really cool Magic card. It's almost always going to be like a 4 mana 4/4 that throws a flood counter on a thing, I guess. You know, the sad thing is put a flood counter on a thing and it becomes an island. You want it to be a land you control because the last ability cares about the ones that you control, right? So with that in mind, you want to put this in a 2-color deck so that you can like make a black source an island. But if you do that, it's not like guaranteed this is going to be a 4 mana 4/4 when it comes down, right? You're actually kind of playing with fire there. The only way to guarantee this is a 4 mana 4/4 and therefore a mediocre Magic card. You don't want it to be a terrible one. You'll settle for mediocre sometimes. is to play like nothing but blue sources in your deck, which the casting cost of the card already kind of wants you to do in the first place. So like, big deal. I put a flood counter on a thing. It was already an island, you know, like even if I am mono blue and I have a few non-basic lands in my deck, it kind of feels like, well, you know, yeah, I made that thing into an island, but it was already making blues. So that kind of feels like a waste. You know what I mean? But I don't know. This does make things cost less, but you know, Goblin Electromancer it makes instants and sorceries cost mana less. We just saw a card in this set that costs 2 mana in Izzet colors that makes instants and sorceries cost 1 less. And like, you know, why would I pay twice as much mana for that effect? And yeah, I know they can cost more than 1 less with this guy, but that takes, you know, multiple turns a lot of the time, unless you like engineer a way to give it haste. And I'm just not like the biggest fan, man, but I will say this is a really, really cool card. The blue Calamity, I didn't expect it to be like the best or most intimidating of the calamities, but it ain't too shabby. You know, it scales as the game goes on. This could be like a 4 mana 7/7 eventually, or an 8/8 even. Could even be a boat, you know, so, you know, it gets large, but doesn't have any keyword abilities to take advantage of the fact that it's large. You know, it doesn't trample, it's not unblockable, doesn't even have island walk like it really should have. Come on, you know. So, you know, I feel like this card is a little bit underpowered, but it's still neat. I like neat cards. If you want to play big dudes that are cool, let's look at Fecund Green Shell here. This is 5 mana, 3 and 2 green for a 4/6 elemental turtle, and as long as you control 10 or more lands, 10 creatures you control get +2/+2. Whenever Green Shell or another creature you control with toughness greater than its power enters the battlefield, look at the top card of your library. If it's a land card, you may put it onto the battlefield tapped. Otherwise, put it into your hands. All right, so we got a pretty good like 3-4-5 curve going now. We got like the 3 mana turtle that gives all of our other like untapped dudes hexproof or whatever that thing does. And then for 4, we got Blossoming Tortoise. For 5, we got this. We can play it after a tortoise regardless of whether or not we got a land drop for the turn. It's, you know, we're kind of cooking. Roaming Thrones in there named Turtle, you know. It's like, it's kind of looking good. We just got to get a turtle payoff. We got to get some turtle power in here. So we have plenty of heroes on this half shell. And yeah, I just want to make turtles in standard. Is that so wrong? But altogether, even if you're playing no other turtles, this is a decent Magic card. If you're ramping enough, you know, land ramping specifically, and it can technically draw you cards no matter what, but sometimes it'll ramp you itself. It's got a great enter the battlefield trigger that does that. So I don't know, dude, like, bro, you know, and like it triggers too whenever like anything enters that has a larger butt than front half. So that could really go off like a whole bunch of times. You could have those 10 lands way faster than you think. So I don't know, dude. Maybe this is like way better than it looks. It doesn't even die to like a Witch Stalker Frenzy the way a Sheldred does. So there's some decks that have like literally no hope of dealing with this card unless they have double lightning strikes. So I don't know, dude. Maybe we're looking at a sleeper here. We'll move into Festival of Embers, I guess we'll do next here. I have a couple of choices, but sure, Festival of Embers, because I think that it looks better than it actually is. So I should look at better cards after this. But Festival of Embers is 5 mana, 4 and a red for an enchantment. During your turn, you may cast instant and sorcery spells from your graveyard by paying 1 life in addition to their other costs. If a card or token would be put into your graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. You can pay 1 and a red to sacrifice Festival of Embers so that you can stop the pain of having nothing actually go to your graveyard. So that's kind of neat, man. Like, 5 mana is too much for this. That's my big acknowledgement, you know? Like, I keep thinking that mono red burn could be a thing with, like, the red virtue. And, like, that even has a 2 mana mode on it, so it's not, like, completely, you know, dead if you can't play it yet. But even then, like, I almost never get to that card. Or if I can cast it, I effectively have to tap out, skip my turn, give my opponent 2 turns, and, like, my burn deck doesn't want to do that. So I don't know if this ever is going to have, like, the space, like, the breathing room to come down in your burn deck. And even if it does, you're giving your opponent a turn to wipe your graveyard of any important cards or just the whole thing, or, you know, crack this with some sort of naturalize effect. So, you know, you are giving them some time to respond to this, or they could just kill you, right? You play this, you tap out. Oh no, that should have been a creature that can block because now I die. You know, like, there's a lot of reasons, a lot of ways your opponent can just like murder you if you play this card. So I'm not sure that I'm like the biggest fan, but you also have to acknowledge, even if you're the surliest, most cynical, croakies type Magic player out there that thinks every single Magic card that's ever been printed is just awful, you have to acknowledge that this first line in this text box is a just cracked line of text, dude. Like, if you actually have this on the table, no matter how you get it there, if you cheat it out somehow, whatever, just having this ability available to you is busted. So yeah, if you can engineer a way to make it happen, then you've got one of the better lines of text that could possibly be on a Magic card. It's like a Yawgmoth's Will, right? But you got to make it work. And that's obviously sort of the puzzle you got to solve, but it might be worth solving it. Let's take a look at yet another rare that you have to pump a bunch of mana into to make it halfway decent. Or do you? This is Portant of Calamity, X and a blue for a sorcery. Reveal the top X cards of your library. For each card type, you may exile a card of that type from among them. Put the rest into your graveyard. You may cast a spell from among the exiled cards without paying its mana cost. If you exiled 4 or more cards this way, then put the rest of the exiled cards into your hand. So you have to have exiled 4 different card types. You have to have exiled a delirium's worth of card types from the top of your library in order to cast a spell for free. That is actually extremely difficult unless you have a ton of mana. Noteworthy then that this kind of functions like a divination. If nothing else, you can pay 3 mana to kind of draw 2 cards, so long as you're able to see 2 different card types among those cards. It's not always going to happen. Maybe it's 2 lands. And you paid 3 mana and sorcery speed to draw a land, which isn't good. But if anything, the card is scalable throughout the game. And it can draw you a bunch of cards if you do get the right number of different permanent types. It can cast a free spell, obviously. You get the right number of card types. So all that is good. But honestly, the fact that it puts some cards into your yard for you could be leveraged in a number of ways. But even if you don't get the free card, it can put 2 or 3 cards in your hand for a few mana. The problem is that it's sorcery speed, yes. But again, things like scalability, the ability to go just hog wild and get a free card off of it, the ability to fuel graveyard strategies, like these are all things that actually do matter. Up next, another talent actually, but this one is rare. It's Scavengers talent. For a single black mana, you get this class. Whenever 1 or more creatures you control die, create a food token, but this ability triggers only once each turn for some reason. On level 2, you have to pay 2 mana for this, 1 in a black. Whenever you sacrifice a permanent, target player mills 2 cards. On level 3, which you pay 3 mana for, 2 in a black, at the beginning of your end step, you may sacrifice 3 other non-land permanents. If you do, return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield with a finality counter on it. So I'm going to like this. I'm an aristocrats guy. I like to sacrifice stuff, and this wants you to sacrifice stuff. You sacrifice creatures, you get food token. I was going to say food tokens, but you don't. You sacrifice creature, you get food token. 1 time a turn, which is so lame, but I guess there are worse things for a single mana, right? Aside from that, though, for just an extra 2 mana, like relatively cheap to actually, get this to level 2, then suddenly being able to mill yourself could be really, really relevant. And obviously, I like this third mode. This cost a total of 6 mana to start reanimating things, but it's 6 mana paid in installments. So that's actually really, really good. You can start returning huge stuff from your graveyard to the battlefield. And note that it's just 3 non-land permanents, not creatures or anything. So you can sacrifice the food tokens that this card has been giving you all game. You can sacrifice clue tokens and stuff like that. And then 3 mana just doesn't actually seem like that much of a problem, right? So, and with all the extra stuff that doles out tokens in this set alone, much less standard at large, then yeah, I think you could actually get something working. Like a Dread Return kind of feel, right, to this card. That sacrificed 3 creatures. This is 3 non-land permanents. It's better than Dread Return? It's not. It is not better than Dread Return, but it is worth noting that once you get this to level 3, you can do this every single turn, and even though I will say they nerfed this ability just slightly because you're past your combat step by the time you actually get the creature back, it's still going to be pretty good to repeat enter the battlefield triggers at least once every single turn if you have the stuff to sacrifice. And I honestly don't think it's going to be too hard to have stuff to sacrifice more than once in a game. So again, the fact that this is so cheap and does 3 seemingly not great but add up to be really, really good sort of different things, then yeah, I think it might have a chance, but it's going to need exactly the right deck. Oh, but you say you want more lizards. Well, I don't give a crap. Actually, I do give a crap. Here's Gev. scaled scorch right here. Gev, the Gecko Gecko. He's 2 mana, a black and a red for a 3/2 legendary lizard mercenary with ward, pay 2 life. Other creatures you control enter with an additional +1/+1 counter on them for each opponent who lost life this turn. Whenever you cast a lizard spell, Gev deals 1 damage to target opponent. So, Vampire Socialite, but like so much better than Vampire Socialite. You know, it has an extra point of power. It has ward on it, a pay 2 life ward. It deals extra damage. Like, can you imagine if there was a 2-drop vampire? It's like whenever a vampire comes into play, zap an opponent. That'd be awesome. So, even though this creature type is a little bit more limited, I still think that this is really, really, really cool. Like, we did see a couple of lizards in that Outlaws at Thunder Junction set, and there's some lizards at large in standard beyond just these, so that we've seen in this set. So I don't know, man. I actually think this makes me want to build like black-red lizards, but it doesn't even have to be lizards. Also note, while we're on Outlaws at Thunder Junction, a second ago I mentioned that set. This is an outlaw. It's a mercenary. So I noted that a lot of the lizards and some of the rats too have like outlaw creature types, which I think is a really, really cool tie-in. But in any case, yeah, 2 mana, 3/2 can deal incremental damage to the opponent, has a really, really good ward ability on it. There's just nothing to not like about this dude. Solid Magic card. One of the first times today that I can truly say, like, this right here, that's a Magic card. We're down to the last 4 cards of the day so far, and honestly, all of these are pretty good. Like, we have reached the territory where we're starting to see some of the best cards of the day. So with that in mind, let's take a look at Coiling Rebirth next. A Rebirth is 5 mana, 3 and 2 black for a sorcery in which you gift a card if you'd like to. Return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Then, if the gift was promised and that creature isn't legendary, create a token that's a copy of it, except it's a 1/1. All right, again, I have to bring this card up again, but we just saw Rotten Mouth at the end of yesterday, and this is like literally made to reanimate that card. I was saying too that if you have like Cruelty of Gix, that plays really well. Like, reanimation works really well with Rotten Mouth in general, and this is a card that's coiling is in the name. Like, come on, like I feel like it's meant to reanimate a Rotten Mouth, and then suddenly not only do you get the Rotten Mouth's like blight trigger enter the battlefield thing, or blight counter into the battlefield trigger. Yeah, that's how you arrange those words. But you also get another one. You get a 1/1 Rotten Mouth that has that same, into the battlefield trigger. So yeah, it's probably what you want to reanimate with this, but there's a ton of stuff that you want to reanimate with this. Of course, it kind of sucks that you don't get the legendary. If you like reanimate a tally, you don't get a 1/1 tally that also has that ETB trigger. That would be incredible. But there are still plenty of creatures with insane ETB triggers in standard that you might want to reanimate with this and double up on. So I don't know if this is like instantly the best reanimator spell in standard, but it's definitely in the top couple, and there's some powerful stuff. Again, like Cruelty of Gix is in standard, and it's kind of hard to get better as a reanimator spell than that. But again, this is about as close as it gets, if not just completely able to blow it out of the water, right? Getting 2 enter the battlefield triggers on a relevant creature is kind of dumb. So again, this might be the go-to. Hey everybody, Ziggy's back. Yeah, you want to look at Dowerport Mage together, bud? Let's do it. He's going to get on the table. 2 mana, 1 and a blue for a 1/3 frog wizard. Whenever 1 or more other creatures you control leave the battlefield without dying, draw a card. Nice. You can also pay 1 and a blue and tap it to return another target creature you control to its owner's hand. So again, I said earlier that we got like a pretty decent payoff for all this like back and forth, back into our hands that the frogs are doing, right? And this is basically the best payoff we could possibly hope for. Just 2 mana for a 1/3 is like not terrible stats, especially in limited, which is why I think this thing might be rare, is specifically the limited environment. But let's not kid ourselves. Let's not be dummies. And let's not pretend we haven't been playing Magic for 30 years over here. This is a pretty abusable line of text, right? Whether the creature is blinked, which is probably what this card is mostly going to be used for, but whether the creature is blinked or it gets bounced back to your hand or something other non-dying thing happens to it, like exile, for instance, then yeah, drawing a card is a pretty big deal, brother. And not only, it's like, it actually, now that I think about it, the more I think about this card, the more dangerous it gets. If it doesn't have Summoning Sickness and you have 2 mana up, it's basically just reads like, you have a counterspell in your hand that draws you a card. That seems really, really good. Does it say another, by the way? Does this card say another? Return another target creature you control. Okay, so it can't return itself. That'd be really annoying. But yeah, just thinking about getting set up with a dude that basically says counter target removal spell, draw a card, and it just has that ability on him for the rest of the game. that is potentially even better than I thought it was going to be. But next we got to look at Keen-Eyed Curator. Man, we've seen a lot of really good one-drops in this set that have like way more power toughness than they should have and they do crazy stuff. But in case you wanted to see a good 2-drop, to go along with all those nasty ones, like here's one for you. This is 2 green mana for a 3/3 Raccoon Scout. As long as there are 4 or more card types among cards exiled with Keen-Eyed Curator, it gets +4/+4 and has trample. You can also pay 1 and exile a card from a graveyard. So it's cute that it's a scavenging ooze, right? Because raccoons, what do? They scavenge. I see what you're doing, and I actually kind of like it. Wizards, good job on that. But it's also a watch wolf. It's just this thing could like fight to the death with a wolf, and both of them would end up being self-canceled. But like, you know, it's still this is a wolf. This is a raccoon the size that is the power and toughness of a wolf. Just pretty interesting to me, at least. But yeah, just being a 2-mana 3/3 in and of itself is like that's a good card. You play that card like in Stompy or whatever. You just play, okay, 2-mana 3/3, it's playable. But yeah, extra gravy on this. You can mess around in graveyards like a scavenging ooze, but instead of giving a +1/+1 counter like every time you mess around, instead after you've messed around enough, he becomes a 7/7 like trample, which is great. You know, like, again, I'm always gonna like 2-drops that have some real like relevance going late into the game. And this definitely does. Not only, again, can it have like real relevance to its activated ability, but you know, by the time like turn 6-7 rolls around, if you're still playing Magic, suddenly your 2-drop morphs into a guy that would be dangerous if you dropped him that turn, you know? So yeah, I really like this. I think it's easily one of the better cards of the day just based on like stats and rate alone. But this is more than a 2-mana 3/3. So much more. But let's look at the final rare of the day, and perhaps, if I'm getting my math right, this might be the final rare of the set, but Fountain Port is a land. It comes into play untapped and taps for colorless mana, but you can also pay 2 mana, tap it, and sack a token to draw a card. You can also pay 3 mana, tap it, and pay a life to create a 1/1 blue fish creature token. And you can also pay 4 mana, tap it, and create a treasure token. Commander All-Star. Forever until forever. Just repeat that word over and over. I wish I had more to say about this, but sometimes a card is just like so obviously insanely playable in at least one format, right? That like all you can really do is look at it and be like, yep, that's good. There's not really a whole lot of nuance to that. I don't have to like wrap my brain around it and think about like 3 different commanders and 8 different cards in standard that do stuff with this. And oh, here's a combo. And no, it's just, ain't that a hell of a Magic card is all. It's really all you got to say sometimes. This does 4 different things, man, if you count the fact that it taps for mana, and you really should, given that it comes into play untapped. But yeah, it draws cards, makes dudes, makes treasures even. just what all do you really need your land to do? The Swiss Army land right here. And I think that just about like literally any commander deck can probably find a use for this card, but so too can just about any, you know, standard deck. Like right now we have Mirrex, which is what I think, you know, control decks are going to continue, you know, kind of resting on, but I'm not actually sure because yeah, Mirrex is a decent win condition. It makes 1/1 guys. They, you know, hit for poison or all that, but this makes actual blockers. They don't come into play tapped either. It just makes actual blockers. You'd have to pay a life for them. So there's that, but it makes things that can block. Pretty good. But also it makes things that can attack. It draws cards, and there's plenty of tokens in like a control deck to draw cards off of. Map tokens sometimes, and clue tokens and all that. And then, yeah, sometimes you'll even want to make the treasure token. Like if you have nothing else to do at the end of your opponent's turn, like control literally always needs mana. So you'll take the ramp mode too, despite the fact that it's like really mana intensive. But just being able to occasionally draw a card, occasionally make blocker, or like create value as the game goes on in like a real board state. Even if it's just creatures that will die to an eventual sunfall, but it makes the creature you get resulting from sunfall even larger, you know, there's that. So I don't know, dude. I think there's at least a one of copy of this in like every blue-white control deck in standard. But beyond that, man, again, commander play until long after our children are teaching their children to play Magic. You know what I mean? It's going to be a while that this card's going to be relevant. Isn't that a heartwarming thought, by the way? I hope it actually happens. This card's from a set called Bloomburrow. It's from 40 years ago. Anyway, that's all That's all I've got for this one. Like I said, there's one more day of spoilers. Most of that's probably going to be a common and uncommon dump. As a matter of fact, I think it's already starting to come down the pipeline as I record this because I see a couple of kind of not great cards that are brand new, but I'll save those until tomorrow so that I have a video to do. But on Thursday, you know, we're getting together on Twitch to review every single card in the set in a speed run. So if you want to be part of that, come on by. We do it for every set now. And honestly, I think I'm getting better at it, but it's still kind of an undertaking. So if you want to see me put myself through it for the community, come on through on Twitch. I'll leave a link in the description, or you can just go to this web address. It should be on your screen right now. Same thing with the Patreon. That's a web address. It's on your screen. You can type it into your bar, but you can also hit the link in the description if you'd rather do that. And just throw $1 a month in the pot. I feel like I'm probably worth $1 a month. I work really hard, so, you know, it supports me much more than you could possibly understand. And you get to pick what videos and decks we do first for Bloomburrow Standard. You'll also... Ziggy, are you okay? I let him back in. He came back in, and now he wants back out, because what he actually wants, like any cat, is for the door to be left open all the time, which I can't do. So, you know, I guess I could. What's keeping me from doing that? I don't know. Anyway, that's really all I've got, guys. I've already done the Twitch and the Patreon shout-outs. So apart from that, just check out all the other previews videos that we've done so far. Links in the description for those. And I'll leave a link in the description for the series I'm doing on the other channel right now, my personal channel, where I review 10 random Magic cards every day. If you haven't checked it out yet, again, link in the description. I'm trying to get that series off the ground. It would be very appreciated if you'd help out and go check those videos out. But that's basically all I've got for this one. One more day of Bloomburrow, and then we can start making decks and doing all kinds of fun stuff, and I cannot wait because the set looks ridiculous. I'll have a lot more to say about it before it's all said and done. I've already wasted enough of your time today, but I'm glad that you clicked in the first place, man. That's it, though. Dunzo for this onezo, and that is Allski Kowalski. So I'll catch you cats later. I'm Deb from The Place. Thanks for watching, Wizards. Spread love and be kind.